This is a very short video to do with solar radiation and albedo. You have to be able to calculate the intensity of the sun's radiation incident on a planet. This we have already looked at. You know the intensity on the Earth's surface is 1400 watts per meter squared. But when you average over the surface of the Earth, it's 340 watts per meter squared. And remember that the intensity is calculated by finding the total power output, which is the solar constant, divided by the area of the sphere of radiation as it arrives at the Earth. In other words, the area of a sphere which has a radius of the Earth's orbital radius. Define albedo. The albedo is from the Latin for white, and is given the symbol alpha. Of a body is the ratio of the power of radiation reflected or scattered from the body to the total power incident on the body. For example, when light is falling on the Earth, if 50% of the light is scattered, then the albedo is going to be 50% or 0.5. Which factors determine a planet's albedo? Now this depends daily on its and is dependent on the season. So you look at the Earth. Which bits are going to be the parts that are reflecting, and which pieces are absorbing? Which parts have high values of albedo? In other words, they absorb most of the radiation, and which parts reflect most of the radiation? So let's take, for example, the oceans, which are dark, have a very low albedo, 0.1. In other words, of all the light that lands on the oceans, only 10% is reflected. In other words, they're good absorbers. Snow, for example, and ice has a high value, 0.84. In other words, 84% of the radiation that falls on snow is reflected. So it has a high albedo, a high white quality, let's say. The global annual mean albedo is only 30%, which means that 30% of the radiation that lands on the Earth overall is reflected. So 70% is absorbed by the Earth. So what would happen if the amount of snow on the solar caps is reduced or melted? What would happen to the value for the albedo? Well, the albedo will be reduced because there will be less snow, which means that less radiation will be reflected, which means that more energy will be absorbed by the Earth.